Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. I did love seeing in the chat that we are all over and that we've got people from everywhere. So I'm just going to share my screen with you and then we'll get going. So I have been in dentistry for quite a while, going on, well, we'll just say this year is right around my 30 something year in dentistry. I've been in the practice management role for almost 17 of those years. And I'm just making sure, there we go, making sure my screen is up for you. So just want to introduce myself to you that way a little bit. We'll talk about it as we go through the slides. So let's get going. If you didn't download the handout off this eZoom, grab a pen and paper. This is a very interactive webinar, and we'll jot some good notes down, have some good questions at the end. We will have some time for Q&A, and let's see what we can learn for today. So quick disclosure, I am a consultant with CareStack. I am an independent, so there is no financial reimbursement back and forth. This is a CE program without that commercial support, and ready to go. So what makes me a little bit different than anybody else that you might have had consulting in the past? If you have, fantastic. If you haven't, great. Let's talk about that a little bit. So what makes me a little bit different is there are a few letters after my name. I only put them on for this portion just so that you know that I do come to you with some great dental background. So I am an RDA. I do keep that up. I'm a very nosy assistant, so I love to get clinical and share side with my doctors. I'm also a master life coach, so you're going to hear some different language with that as well. I have my master's in business administration. I'm a certified business analyst so that I can speak the numbers, but I love the behavior that drives. So last part of that is I am also a Reiki master. So again, a little bit of the left and right, completely behavior-based coaching. The numbers are the numbers, but they are just a mirror of the behaviors that are going on in your practice. So that's why we're talking about these 5 top metrics tonight. What are the behaviors that drive those numbers, and why are those numbers really important? So numbers people, awesome. We've got your language. Non-numbers people, great. We've got that language as well. So let's get going. So today we're going to talk about your active patient base. What is that and what does it mean? Retention, which you're going to hear me use the word relationship interchangeable with that. Our new patients versus our existing patients. What do we need and how many of each type do we want in the practice to make it healthy looking forward into the future? And also our value of our time. So time is different for everybody. So we're going to take a quick look at that. And lastly, we're going to talk about collections, and not just collections, but your net collections, because that's what you put in the bank. So we're going to look at what percentage is healthy for you. So again, pen and paper ready to go. And talk about how the cornerstones of your practice are equally yoked and how that looks and feels for you. There is going to be a complimentary gift for those that stay on to the very end. We're going to talk about that. And let's get started. So when you look at your practice and you remove the roof, so your practice is like a home, your dental home. So we're going to take the roof off of that, and we're going to look at the 4 cornerstones of your practice, or what makes it so that it's healthy and balanced. And these are those 4 areas of your practice. It's going to be your client base, because client's different than patient. Client is decision-making mode. Patient is in the passive receiving position, so they've accepted treatment. You've got your schedule and time, you've got your team, and then you've got your facility. So if all 4 of those cornerstones are equally yoked or balanced, and your practice is smoothly going, I can tell you after 30 years in dentistry, I've yet to walk into a practice that has all of those equal in the very beginning. There's always an area that needs some focus and attention. So as that area grows, then of course we focus on the other one. So you're always growing equally. Sometimes life happens and one goes kittywampus, but this is the awareness conversation, not the resolution conversation. So we're going to talk about our first metric, which is our active patient base. So when you think about your active patient base, these are patients that have actually walked in over the threshold into your practice in the last 18 months. And we look at that number at 18 months because we want to allow patients to be in the practice for 3 care cycles, or at least have the opportunity to be in the practice for 3 care cycles. So active patient base is basically your blood pressure of your practice. This is the number that drives every other decision in the practice. So we're gonna take a look at that. So what is we already talked about the definition of that, but how do we find it? How do we find out active and DPMS versus patients that have been in the practice in the last 18 months? So is there a difference? If there is, why is it important to know the difference? So we want to know how many patients are calling your practice their dental home, right? Again, 18-month window. How many team members do you need to support how many active patients you have? So going around that cornerstone, right? How many hours do you need to be open to see those patients? So that's your time and your team. How many operatories do you need to support your patients? That's your facility. And do you have room for growth? And what does growth mean to you? Growth might mean something different to you than your neighbor. Either answer is okay because it's yours. So let's talk about how to find the active patients. So you're going to start with a date range from today and go backwards 18 months. And you're going to see how many patients are marked as active in your DPMS and make that note. If you're a single doctor practice, all those patients belong to you. If you're a multi-doctor practice, you're going to go in and make sure that your primary provider, your doctor choice, is for each associate and see how many patients are attached to that doctor. If you're not currently doing that, that's a different conversation and we can have that afterwards. So if everybody belongs to the practice and everybody belongs to everybody, there's nobody attached to me, that's a different conversation to find out how many patients there are. So for right now, we're going to pretend that we have the availability to divide all those patients out. So if you have your handout, we're going to start with our case study. Now, this is an actual practice that I've worked with. So these are real numbers, and this is the real life scenario, what is going on in this practice. So this was a single doctor practice for 5 years. She brought in an associate for 3 years. The associate joined the practice as an equal 50-50% provider as of January 1 last year. So he worked as an associate, then he bought in as a partner January of last year. Currently, this practice has 3,800 active patients. So starting off, practice has 2 full-time hygienists that they work the same schedule with the owner doctor, the primary doctor, for the last 5 years, same schedule. They've not changed or added or done anything different. The practice then added 2 hygienists to support the associate. So as he grew his patient base, they added hygienists to help support that so that they could grow his patient base. So in your handout, you're going to see this in the beginning. Just highlighted it. You'll notice I looked ahead of my slides. I can't help myself. So in the worksheet component, we're going to put 3,800 active patients. Dr. A, our primary doctor, she has 3,000 of those attached to her. Dr. B has 800 of those. In the DPMS, in their software, they have 4,250 active patients. And so that's a difference of 450 patients. So these are patients that have come in to the practice in addition to the active patients. And that's the total. Dr. A has a 3,225 attached to her. Dr. B has 8,225. So these are good numbers to jot down because we're going to reflect back to them as we move on. So now we're going to talk about retention. So retention, relationship, interchangeable number. If you've heard of the term before, great. If you haven't, welcome to the world of behavior and the reason why we want to make sure our patients come back to us. So there are a lot of things that drive retention, but retention really is that benchmark that says how many patients are in relationship with me in the practice that call us their dental home and we can depend on them coming to see us into the future. So retention is any patient that has a next reservation. It can be hygiene, it can be clinical, but if they leave today and they've reserved to come back tomorrow, they're in relationship with you and we retain them into the practice. So this is a foundational number for you. So thinking on your practice, if your active patient base number is your blood pressure, the retention is your pocket depth of your health of your practice. Or do we have perfect twos everywhere? We have a couple of threes. Heaven forbid we've got a sinker 7 in the back somewhere. So this is the retention number. It's your pocket depth. So we're going to look at your total active patients. And now we're going to identify of those patients who's coming back to see us with their next. So how do you find this in your DPMS system? You go in, date range, you go back 12 months, and then you go ahead any time into the future. I always recommend a 12-month and an 18-month window, and you want to see how many patients of your active patient base have that. It's a very interesting number to start tracking once you start looking at it. So again, single doctor, they're all you. If you're multi-doctor, you're going to want to do it for all your providers. So when we look at this, we want to see of the patients that are coming back into us, of our active patient base, how many are current or in that relationship mode with us of the 18-month. We're going to call that our current patient base. Anybody that's overdue to come and see us, clinical or hygiene, 18 months and 1 day, they're considered overdue. They've not been in, they've missed at least 2 recare cycles if they come in every 6 months. And for some reason, they've lost trust. They're not in a relationship. We don't know why they're not back. But if it's 18 months and 1 day, they're going to be in that overdue bucket. So we just have the 2 buckets, current, overdue. Interesting for you to look to see how many fall into which bucket. So an ideal ratio when you first get started is that you want 90% of your patients in active patient base. It's okay for 10% to be in that overdue. And what will happen and what you might find in that bucket could be patients that are like me that travel for a living and can't reserve that far ahead. I call up when I know that I'm in town. Hey, I need to get in. What does it look like? Get my next reservation. Might be people who have moved out and just never notified us. Might be, other doctors and things like that just can't reserve that far ahead, 6 months ahead if that's what their hygiene requires. So there might be some that are in that bucket. So we allow for that 10% variance for patients that cannot reserve ahead, may move out, may have some difference in their life. There might be some life changes that have happened, but we allow that to happen to be healthy. So again, 90% for your 2%, your 2 millimeter perio charting. 85 would be a 3 and a 4. Anything lower than 80%, it's a good conversation to have. So let's look at the case study. So we're looking at the same practice that we were talking about before. So Dr. A, the owner doctor, she's a relationship-driven doctor. She takes time with all of her patients. She enjoys doing everyday dentistry, or what we like to call toothpaste dentistry. And she knows how much time it takes for her chairside, her conversations with her patients. She likes to have that extra time to sit with them chairside, and she reserves exactly the amount of time that she needs. She's very aware of her time. She always stays on time. Dr. B, really a high energy guy. He's way excited. He's the life of the party when he walks in the room. Patients love him because he lights up the room. He likes to be busy, and he's very quick with his conversation. He's very quick with the patients. He does underestimate his time chairside. It runs behind all the time. His afternoon patients have found that they wait an extended amount of time for him. So by the time his day is done, he's running way behind. Patients have waited a long time. He's got some conversations that are different than Dr. A at the end of his day. So if you're looking at your handouts, so we're looking at our current patients, and we wanted to be able to see how many of those patients for each of the 2 doctors that are in the practice. So we look at Dr. A. She has the 3225, if you remember that from the first one. She has 968 that are overdue. So she has 70% retention for her patients. Dr. B, again, he's growing his practice. He has 825. Currently, he has 413 of those patients that are overdue. So he has a 50% retention. So if we're looking at that, between the 2, there's some work to be done on retention. Different conversations with patients are leaving but you can start to see the different personalities chair side and different personalities of patients that are coming in for the two doctors. So now we want to talk about the new versus the existing patients. So we have all heard in our study club that there's got to be X amount of new patients coming in, and marketing companies are going to tell you need between 20 and 30 new patients. I've been hearing that since the 80s when I started. That's the golden number of new patients to have. Well, that's great if we're keeping them. But what happens if we're getting 20 new patients a month? We're keeping all of those. What happens to the patients that have been with us 3, 4, 5 years? How are they able to come in, and are those patients replacing our existing? So there's the nugget ahead of time. There's the nugget ahead of time because I always get ahead of myself. So new patient. So new patients, anybody that's been a 150 comprehensive exam in the last 18 months. So if you're doing renews at every 5 years, your 150s will count as a new patient for this example, because you want to see how many of those renews that you're doing and how many fall into that 150. So existing patient base, we already know that ain't. So we want to look at this in a 12-month rather than the 18-month, because we want to see our annual new patient flow. So you're basically going to run all your 150s, however many come in, divided by 12. That's your average for the time range of this year, last year, right? Because we're almost halfway through. Then you want to take those patients and be able to see how many of those patients have their next with you, next reservation, hygiene clinical, and are they at 90%? It's an interesting number to track if you aren't already, because you want to see what kind of retention are you getting for all of that marketing effort that you're doing. So whatever you're doing to get new patients, is it working, not working? What type of patients are coming in? What type of treatment are you doing? And are they staying in the practice? So here you go. It's basically same reports. Run your new patients, your 150s divided by 12. Okay, so let's look at our case study. So we're starting to see the behavior of our two doctors. So Dr. A, she has a relationship-based referral-only practice. When she started, she wanted to make sure she knew her patients. She was able to know the families. She wanted to be the family dentist for a long time. She was right out of school, opened up her own practice, and she said to herself, this is the type of practice that I want for myself and my family, my community, everybody to know everybody. So that's what she's done. She has a 95% 5-star review each and every month, very consistently. The only thing that she has done besides referrals is she's a Delta Premier only dentist. Dr. B, because he's that high energy guy, he loves the social media aspect of the world. He runs his specials on Facebook and Instagram. He puts ads and gifts and, free exams in his community papers. And he just really likes to be out there seeing different marketing strategies. He does something new every month, try something new every month, just kind of that high energy guy. Dr. B, he has less than 10% of his reviews that are 5-star left because, again, he's got his afternoon patients that are waiting. Sometimes, people that come in for something free, they just want the courtesy. They just want the whatever it is. They're not there for a relationship. It's a different experience for those patients than the ones that are coming in for the lifelong experience. Not saying that you can't run ads on Facebook and Marketplace. I'm not saying that. I'm not giving you marketing strategy, just showing you the difference of this practice and what is working for them and how we can see the numbers that are different. So on your handout, we're going to take a look. So in the last 12 months, Dr. A, she got 200 new patients. Dr. B got 400. So overall for this practice, 3,800 patients, that's 600 new patients last year or in the last 12 months. It's a crazy number. And if we look at the average per month, Dr. A gets 17 and Dr. B gets 33. So if we're only going on that information, we're only tracking how many new. Dr. B is killing it. Dr. A would be the one sitting down having the conversation of what the heck's going on. You're only getting 17. What are you doing? Right? So what is that number? What behavior is driving that number? So we're going to come back to this in a minute because it's not always the answer that we think it is. So I think of the value of time. I love this graphic because I love to ask my clients, do you see that spiraling up or do you see that spiraling down? Either answer is okay, but it just tells me where your mindset is in the moment that you're looking at the graphic. So it's a very interesting behavioral question to see how we're looking at our time. If it's going down, we're overwhelmed. If it's coming up, things are great. So let's talk about the value of time in the practice. So we all know there's a difference between super busy, running with our roller skates on, and being productive, right? Who wants to do 511 posterior composites at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Or if you end at 3, that's that 3 o'clock patient, all posterior work. What the heck's going on, right? So we want to be able to look at the value of the time, 3 separate legs drive to that main number. So your 3 legs are going to be your clinical value, patient value, and of course your net collection value, or net value for the patient. We're going to talk about all 3 of those. So this really is the driver and the financial component of your practice. How well are you designing your day? Are you getting the profitability, the results that you want, supported by ideal patient care? Because really it's all about the patient care. Production is the end result, all other behavior that we do in the practice. So there's a nugget for today that's not on here. So if we want to be able to find out our clinical value of time, so easy. We're just going to go back 12 months, look at a year at a time. Look at your production by provider, divide it by the amount of hours that you were in the practice. So if you say to yourself, I'm going to work 4 days a week, I'm going to work 48 weeks of the year, 1,550 hours in the year. That's what you say to your business. I'm going to be here for you. Now, let's just say you happen to be somebody that likes to take last minute CE. We go out of town. We might have a 3 or 4 day weekend that's unexpected. We might take some extra time out of the practice. That extra time out of the practice, we need to account for that. But in the very beginning of the year, if you said, this is what I'm committed to, then that's what we're going to drive this number on for your hourly. You're going to do the same thing for your hygienist and any associates that you might have in the practice. So just look at the days, how many hours you work in the days, how many weeks in the year that you're working. There's your hours. So you want to divide it in to find out what your hourly is. So your new patient value, you want to do the same thing. You want to say, if I'm bringing in my new patients, and they're coming in for full cash value, or are they coming in membership club value? Or do they come in the Delta reimbursement, Cigna reimbursement, MetLife reimbursement? You'd have to figure that out depending on what that is. I would highly recommend doing your UCR reimbursement and then look at your lowest PPO reimbursement so that you can see what the gap and what the difference of that is in those 2 different types of reimbursements for your new patients. Just to know what are the adjustments for you in that time. So we want to be able to take a look at our patients that are here with us, stayed in with the practice for the 18 months, and what does that look like? So here's a second pearl, or it could actually be our third one by now. The value of our existing patients that stay in relationship with us over the course of a 20-year relationship with the practice. If they come in for healthy hygiene every 6 months, once every 5 years, they do something clinical that's right around that insurance benefit line, $1,500. They do their dentistry, and once every 5 years, they refer somebody that's just like them. So in a 20-year period, they're going to refer 4 people. It's a very conservative number. So I come in, do my healthy hygiene every 5 years. I get $1,500 done. I have a restoration done. Maybe I do a crown, but I don't do anything else for 10 years. But I'm coming in, and then 5 years, I bring my sister in, then I bring my son in, then I bring my nephew, and those are my 4. At the end of my 20 years, the value of me in the practice is $45,000 by not only my hygiene, my clinical care, but also my family coming in. Now, each of those family members ideally would also bring in 4 over 20 years, 1 every 5 years. But that's where we get the value of each patient that's existing, staying the patient as being $45,000. So when we do it, the big hoopla for the new patients and we give them gift bags, and give them the balloons, confetti goes off and all the things that we do for the new patient that comes in, we'll say your healthy new patient exam is $500 and we'd be very, you do everything. So great. But what do we do for our patients that stay with us consistently over a lifetime that are really worth $45,000 versus the $500 new patient that never comes back? So again, different way to think of the value of our patients, new versus existing. I'm not saying news aren't important because they absolutely are, but we also need to look at our existing a little bit differently. So if we're thinking of the value of time when it comes to net, so these are the adjustments, difference between cash adjustments. What does that look like for you? So, adjustments can be professional courtesy. That's your choice. Adjustments are all the PPOs. That was your choice to sign up as well. Marketing plans, also a choice. But take a look at the different types of adjustments that you have. A healthy practice will have anywhere between 5 to 7. If you have more than 7 types of adjustments, there's a pocket for you to be taking some awareness. You're getting into a 4 or 5 depth because you are adjusting off and maybe knowledge, no knowledge. I don't know. You'll have to see what those are. But take a look and see what are the types of adjustments? How many do you have? And are you okay with the buckets? If you're okay with the buckets in your high PPO practice and you said, this is what I'm doing, great, if you designed it that way. But if there's some things on there that you are not liking, or if it's something that you're not aware of, it's a conversation to have. Find out what it is. Healthy adjustments, again, 7-ish, right? Plus or minus 2, 5 to 9. I encourage you not to have more than that. Okay, so let's take a look at our case study and look at our practice we're talking about. So Dr. A, she reserves her day very strategically. She's a morning person like I am. She does all of her big cases in the morning. She likes to have focus time. She doesn't want to be interrupted. She understands the flow. She likes to do her smaller cases in the afternoon. She has different conversations. She enjoys the way that this works. Her hygienists also do their perio cases in the morning while she's doing her comprehensive cases, less exams. Her healthy hygiene is in the afternoon, so she can do those exams back and forth while she has shorter reservations in her schedule as well. It's a great organization for ideal scheduling for her. Dr. B, as we know, he's our high energy guy. He loves to have 2 chairs going, right? And he knows that he likes to have at least 1 to 2 extra chairs double booked because he has a high ratio of no-shows, cancellations. We know he runs late already. So he likes to have that energy going, that different feeling for his patients than Dr. A. She's very deliberate with how she likes her day to be focused. So let's take a look at our handout. Take a look at the hours. Again, I gave you a little heads up about the 1,500 hours, depending on how many days you're working and how many weeks you're working. So Dr. A, she's 4 days a week. She works her 48 hours. I'm sorry, her 48 hours, her 48 week. So she's at 1,536. She produced just under 700,000. So her hourly is 425. Dr. B, of course, he wants to be busy. He wants all 5 days, busy, busy, busy. So he actually works 1920 hours for the year. His production was just under 600. So he did 120 less than Dr. A, more days in the practice. His hourly is 300 an hour. So here's Dr. A's hygiene team, hygiene 1 and 2. They work the same hours as her. Since there's 2 of them, it's double the hygiene hours. So when you're looking at the revenue, you need to remember to do that. So while production is 307,000, this hygiene team on an average makes $100 an hour. So think of what your hygiene is with bite wings, period charting, whatever it is. Are they paying for that row? It's an awareness. Hygiene 3 and 4 are the two hygienists that work with Dr. B. Of course, they have their 5 days a week times 2. So they actually, that hygiene department works 40 hours in a year. It's crazy. They produced exactly the same, dollar for dollar. So their hygiene hourly, $80. So all you knew about this practice was as a 2-doctor practice, and they were just under a $2 million practice. In your study clubs or conversations, you'd be like, dang, that practice is going great. It's a $2 million practice. There's only 2 doctors, got 4 hygienists. They've got enough dental assistants to support it. 3 girls up front. Look at this. It's going great. Well, when you actually look at it, the total practice itself is running on only $181 an hour. So if you think of a facility with 17 operatories, and they've got room for 5 ladies up front. Currently, there's 3. They've got their clinical staff, 4 hygiene, or are they running at their band, right? It makes you look at it just a little bit differently, the value of the clinical time. So they're not doing anything different. It's just the awareness of where is the money going as far as the revenue to support or the production to support type of dentistry that each dentist is doing. And can they do it independently or as a collaborative? How is the collaborative working together? Because remember, Dr. B just bought in as a 50% partner at the beginning of the year last year. So it's a little bit different than being as an associate. So now let's look at net collections, right? So this is our last metrics for this evening. So we've already talked about the difference between being busy and being productive. And what do those adjustments look like depending on how many PPOs we have in the practice? So you're going to want to run the reports, see what it is. If you don't know what your monthly overheads are, this is a great time to take a look at what that is. And by that, you're going to want to make a couple of buckets. So you need your facility costs, whatever that is, put all of your team in a different bucket, just their base salary if you have an incentive plan that does not go in there. Then you're going to have anything that you do as an owner for your owner compensation. Then anything else that's a variable goes over on the other side. Lab supplies, anything that's not a consistent number goes into your variable bucket. So take a look at your 4 buckets and then take a look at your net collections and see which bucket is supporting each of those overheads. Because at the end of the day, there are 2 parts that you can make a difference in your practice as far as being profitable. You can reduce your overhead, which who wants to do that unless it's something crazy? But you don't want to get rid of your team or anything else. But how you can be a more productive practice is you increase your bottom line, and how you increase that bottom line can be different types of dentistry that you're doing, reserving your schedule a little bit differently, perhaps like Dr. A, where a little bit more structured and you know where your high production is. Are you able to see the amount of adjustments that you're doing in your hygiene department? Let's say you're a high PPO practice. You've got 4 different types of benefit plans you're in assignment with. Well, who are the highest write-offs? And how many of those patients do you have in a hygiene day? Let's just pick on Cigna for today, just because we can. So let's say Cigna is your highest write-off. You get the lowest reimbursement on your healthy hygiene visits. If you have 2 or more Cigna patients in a day, your hygienist cannot make their band or what it costs to run their day for that day. Because if they're unable, or writing more off than they're able to actually produce. Because really they can only add a couple of services to increase their hourly. Or if you're not already doing it, maybe they're doing impressions for night guards. There are only a few things that a hygienist could do besides SRP, soft tissue management, to increase their hourly. So it's how is it organized and how many write-offs are they having to take in their day? It's not their fault if they're not making their daily number. It's the schedule. And how you can resolve that is an awareness today. You're not going to see that result for 6, 7, 8 months in the future, depending on how far ahead your next hygiene reservation is available for you. So let's take a look at this practice and see how they're doing with their debt. Knowing already what we know. So we know 4 of the 5 factors already on this practice. So Dr. A already gave it away earlier. She started a scratch practice right out of school. She's only Delta Premier. That's it. Dr. B, he signed up for everybody, as we already know from his personality. He's on every PPO available because he wanted to be able to bill his patients based on insurance, because in his mind, insurance was the necessary need to build his practice. It's a different conversation for a different day, and we can have it for sure. So, and don't forget, not only is he on every PPO, but he's also runs all the specials on Facebook, Instagram, community papers. He does all of that to drive patients coming into the practice. So we already saw how many new patients he gets coming in and how many Dr. A gets coming in and what is the retention for those. So I did the date range for this pre-COVID because I didn't want it to be the conversation. Well, it's post-COVID. I don't have enough patients. Everything changed. We all know the world changed. That year after, numbers just aren't the same. We're just now getting to our new norm as far as most practices, not every practice. So that's why you see these numbers being before COVID. So production, just under $1 million, 1.8. They had adjustments for the entire practice of almost $550,000. So 29% of what they produced in that 12 months, they happily gifted and wrote off. It's a big number when you look at it that way. Dr. A, because remember, she's only in Delta and fee for service, her write-offs were 103 of that, or 15%. Dr. B, because we know how he is and all the specials and everything that he does, his adjustments were 54%. So for me, that would be an interesting conversation to have before we became a partner. But, they had the conversation. They were fine with it. They've made some adjustments. But still, 54% of everything he did, being super busy, double booking, all of the crazy, he was giving away more than he was actually being able to keep. So the hygiene department, again, not their fault because of PPOs, but overall, total practice hygiene department, they wrote off 22% of what they were able to produce. So again, these are numbers to create some awareness and different conversations around how profitable is my practice and where can I make some adjustments. Knowing what you're writing off and where you're writing it off creates a totally different conversation other than if we just saw 29% of the practice had some adjustments. You could say, well, that's not bad, because ideally, right, again, if you're in that 7% or 7 different types of write-offs, no more than 9, probably 5, but in that category, and if you were at 29%, most of those we're just going to say were membership clubs and or family and friends that got a courtesy. You could be okay with that 29%. 29% PPO adjustments is totally different because you can see production-wise, Dr. B, unfortunately, was not making compensation for the practice or for himself that he thought he would. So I love this quote from Dr. Wayne Dyer. I have listened to him for more of my life than not. My dad was a huge fan, introduced me to him as a young person. Absolutely love him. So when we start to change the way we look at things, then the things that we look at start to change. So when you go back to your practice and you run these numbers and you're able to see where are my buckets and where am I healthy, where are my 2s and my 3s and my period charting, where are my 4s and 5s, you can start to see what the behavior is around the number. So I hope that that's helpful in creating some awareness of the top 5 numbers in your practice. So I would love to be able to have some conversations around what do you see, right? Because this is historical data that we're looking at. Remember, number is just a number. It's the behavior that drives that number. My favorite analogy is the bathroom scale. It's not my friend. But you stand on the scale, it gives you a number, it tells you the behavior of the past. But what do you want to change into the future? So when you run your numbers and you see your baselines, if there is somewhere that you want to make a change and you want a different result for your future, those are great conversations to have. Be available to answer any of those questions that you might have, and we can have some great communications. So I will give you my quick disclaimer that, this is my personal knowledge giving you this information. I've been in over 4,000 practices in my career. I've personally consulted with over 650. I have taught nationally and internationally, so I do have a little bit of street cred on that, but this is all my information as far as my knowledge with consulting. So love to help and support you on that. Don't forget to use your CE Zoom code for tonight's webinar, which is A. Clark, which is me, for this year, 2023. And I'd love to open this up now for any questions that we might have, any conversation you'd like to have. And at the very end, would love to have an opportunity to just talk to one or two of you if you're open to consulting. I do have a boutique practice, and I do currently have room for one client to come on it. So Kelsey, I'm going to hand it back over to you to help with this part.
Awesome. Thank you. I don't have any questions that have come in yet, so I just wanted to touch on a few things. I know that at the beginning, Janita was a little cut out. Just to clarify, we are CareStack. We work with Amy very closely. She's wonderful at what she does. And the 3 top things that people come over to CareStack for are scheduling, getting more patients, reporting and analytics, and collections. Those are the 3 things of many that we really excel at, but it really tied into tonight's presentation. So if you'd like to check us out, I'm just going to pop into the chat here a link. If you want to see what's new with CareStack, you can click on that link and fill out your information, and we will reach out to you to check in and get you on the books. But yeah, I don't have any questions. They're asking for the code again. I'm just going to put the CE code into the chat as well, so everybody has it. All right. Oh, there we go. Perfect. That's even easier. All right. Here we go. We got one. Awesome. I know it always takes a couple of minutes here to get
That's okay. Yeah. And
let's see. Submit the fees with the PPOs based on the contracted rates. So how can we determine the write-offs?
So what you would want to do is see what there are 2 ways to do your fees in your software. So you can either put in your UCR all the time and do the adjustments down to the PPO rate of reimbursement. So it always shows that adjustment. That's one way of doing it. The other way is that you have your fee schedules already in your DPMS. And so if I'm a Cigna patient or MetLife, I would come in. The front office ladies would then pick the fee schedule attached to me or my employer, and it would automatically put that fee schedule in. And then it would not show the adjustments. So either way, so if you're doing full UCR and doing the adjustments, it's an easier way to look at it. Otherwise, what you would do is say, I have 80 patients on MetLife, and MetLife's reimbursement for my hygiene, $80 versus my cash, which is $100. So I know for those 80 patients, I had an adjustment of $20. So it is going to be a little bit of math. If you had something like CareStack, you would be able to find these reports really easy because it does all the hard work and hard thinking for you, which is great. One of the reasons why I love it. But it's a little bit harder to do the adjustments. I shouldn't say harder. It's harder because you have to run the manual part of it if you have it, and if you had CareStack or another analytic platform. But personally, I love CareStack the most, which is why we're here today.
All right. That's the only question I had come through. So if you're okay with it, we might wrap up here a little bit early. Did you have anything else that you needed to close out on your end?
No, I think I'm really good. I'll put my information up here if anybody wants to reach out. My company name is Avalon Consulting and Training. So it's avalonconsultingandtraining.com. You may go online and request a conversation with me there, or you're welcome to reach out to me on my cell, which is a local number here in Arizona, just 602-300-2696.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time for this evening. We'll be sending a follow-up email with the recording by early next week in case you would like to view this presentation again. And you can reach out Amy there at her email, and have a great night. And I see some questions coming through about the codes, so we'll follow up with you all individually after this. So have a great night.
Perfect. Thank you guys for your time. Appreciate it.